Hi out there, music fans. Welcome back to the wonderful world of music, and it's time for another exciting musical review. I'm Nick Cicada, coming in hot here. It's been quite the week. Just a week ago, some band from out of state was like, "Hey Nick, we can get you booked at Lion's Lair. We've got a show planned out, and we'd love to have you open for us." And I was like, "Sure, I've never played Lion's Lair before." And then they're like, "Oh, whoops. Actually, the venue chose our opener, so we have no say over it, and tough shit, and this was a mistake on our part." And I was like, "Yeah, this sure is a mistake on your part. Shouldn't ask for someone to open for you unless you're like absolutely sure they can open for you." In any other type industry, this kind of work ethic would be unacceptable, where you just make fake offers, and then you're just like, "Oh, actually, no, sorry. You don't get any revenue this month because the venue makes all the decisions, not us, even though it's our show. The venue just chose someone else." This is why no prominent band that anyone gives a shit about has ever come out of Denver. It's because we give more priority to touring bands than to local music. I know that everyone locally would love to see me on stage with like professional lighting and sound and everything, and do like more than 2 songs, but I never get to because the city just does not prioritize local music. It's really, really bizarre, the sort of infrastructure that's set up. Anyway, after that, I was offered to review an album, so that's what this video is going to be, an album review, and I figured this would help me regain some of my dignity as a respected music reviewer and critic, a sommelier of music, one could say, because I like a lot of music, and I like consuming music, and I think it's worthwhile, because music is a pretty neat medium.
Do you see just how they planned it? 'Cause when I dream of Atlantis.
I was asked this specifically by the band Kreature Feature. This is a review of their album No Vacancy. I was just asked out of the blue, would I give this album a listen? Or I guess technically it's an EP because it's pretty short. And I said, sure, I will review it in video form. I will share my honest thoughts, opinions, feedback, etc. on No Vacancy by Kreature Feature. I had to stipulate that I will not be paid for reviews, because I think more often than not, when a reviewer is paid, that even if it isn't biased or nepotistic or whatever, it can often come across like that. Even if a reviewer does really try to share their honest thoughts and opinions, it is distorted somewhat by the fact that you're being paid. So I just like to review shit because I really have nothing better to do with my time than listen to shit or watch shit and then think about it. My brain is just a processing machine. Whenever I watch a review by like Brad Taste in Music or one of those big music review channels, it's kind of like, really, how reliable can this opinion be, considering that he has to filter through like 500, 700 albums a week. Really, at that point, it all just kind of becomes mush. So for the purposes of this review, I listened to No Vacancy by Kreature Feature in its entirety, beginning to end once, and then I gave it a second listen, made some little mental notes about what I like or don't like about every particular track. So if you are in a band and you've made an album and you'd like it reviewed, just say in the comments or email me or whatever, ask me somehow and be like, "Hey, I'd like you to review my album," and there's a pretty good chance that I could eventually get around to that. I've actually made this offer for like years and years. I'm actually surprised nobody approached me before now and was like, "Hey, will you give my shit some free publicity?" It feels more like people would do that, but yeah, I'm willing to give your album a fair shake. I just don't want to come off as too biased. So I'm not going to necessarily give your album like a super positive review. It might be kind of neutral, or for everything I know, I might be over the moon with it. I'll try not to be excessively negative or anything, especially if you're a small band. If you're just starting out, I'm not going to give you the frickin' Leonard Maltin, Roger Ebert treatment or anything. So anyway, let's talk about No Vacancy by Kreature Feature. This here is the cover. I laser printed it out just for the purposes of this review. It's pretty dark. That's just how laser printing works. This is an interesting album. As I said, Kreature Feature is a band from New Jersey, and I don't know much about the culture of New Jersey or anything about it except The Sopranos is set there, and I've never even watched The Sopranos, so besides that, I know next to nothing about the context of this album, what it's trying to say, but I'm going in blind and I'm trying to judge the music on its own merits. On the cover here, we see an organ. I'm not sure if this is the organ that was specifically used in the making of this album, because there are points where it sounds like there's organ and then there's points where it sounds like there's a keyboard. Obviously this is a big wooden model in some kind of mausoleum or something, so it looks very professional, and I'm guessing that it's a Hammond or something, and it's what was used in the track Atlantis, not to be confused with the Donovan song of the same name. Atlantis is a pretty good track because of the repeating organ riff. I like organ a lot in contemporary songs when and if it does show up. I guess this is an organ, although on second glance it also kind of looks like a piano, but there's no piano on this album, so I'm not sure. I guess you will have to ask Kreature Feature as to the production of this thing. Anyway, I really like organ in modern music. I would say the gold standard is Quintron, obviously. What he's able to do with just an organ is hella impressive. There's nothing else but like a rudimentary drum track and just organ. And he sounds like Jerry Lee Lewis, right? His vocal pitch is like, well, if the... You know, and I think that's something that's kind of necessary for rock. I think rock songs need great vocal range. Like, you can go low or you can go deep. Unfortunately, No Vacancy doesn't really feature a great deal of vocal range or variety between the tracks, and it stays mostly on the low end. The vocal is like, well, if I went to Atlantis. That's okay, I guess. I mean, not everyone can be, Donald Fagen or whatever with, like, the wild vocal range. And obviously not everyone wants to be Michael Jackson. I guess if I was told that the intention with this album was purely to have a mid-tempo, low-pitched vocals type experience, then, like, yeah, this album has succeeded. I feel at the same time like some of the production decisions are going for kind of a 70s style flair. Definitely some what today is called yacht rock, obviously, but which back then was just known as like jazz fusion or jazz rock or any number of those things. Steely Dan, a band like Steely Dan probably would not even consider their stuff jazz rock, purely because there's so much genre experimentation, production madness going into albums like Katy Lied or Asia that I wouldn't necessarily apply any one particular genre to them. In songs like Black Friday off Katy Lied or Bodhisattva off Countdown to Ecstasy, those aren't really even jazz rock songs. Like Black Friday is a song that goes hard and it's basically just a rock song. Bodhisattva is kind of a sock hop type jaunt, but neither of them sound particularly like anything on here, nor does any Steely Dan song, and maybe that's not what Kreature Feature was going for, not to be Steely Dan. I'm not sure exactly what to compare this sound to, where it's really slow and the vocal range is like all low, like I'm not sure exactly what kind of genre I would classify this as. Anyway, I would say that the two best tracks on here are definitely Night and Mosquito. They start out pretty slow, like the other songs, but then at a certain point there are interesting production elements introduced in. Mosquito has a really neat fuzzy effect that kicks in near the middle, and obviously that's some kind of pedal or looper or something that's attached to the electric guitar. So that sounds great. Mosquito track, obviously you want some kind of fuzz to sound like a mosquito. You want kind of a buzzy electric type sound. I would say it delivers in that respect. And then with Night, there's a point near the end where it starts screaming, "Let me be your night." and it's going in like one ear and in the other ear. It's the most interesting if you have noise canceling headphones or earbuds, I assume. But that's a very interesting production technique, and it provides some contrast with the lower type vocal range that all the songs have, because the night vocals are a little bit higher and more intensity and feel a little more, big impact. So I like that. I would say they're the most interesting songs just based on those production elements. I like songs where the production itself is almost a presence, kind of a fifth of the band or something, and it's like, wow, you've got some really interesting little interjections there that kind of break up the pace and probably couldn't be done live but are interesting nonetheless, because that's the advantage of studio music, is it doesn't have to be stuff that can be played live. It can just be like interesting in its own way and looped and shuffled around and everything. So I like that. Those two tracks are pretty interesting. I would say the low point of the album is the middle track, Refill, which is also the shortest of the album. It's only like a minute and a half. It's pretty monotonous. And same goes for the outro, which is the longest song of the album, at 5 minutes. And I feel like you should switch up a little with like 5 minutes, maybe not with 4 minutes, but 5 minutes is pushing the listener's patience. And I get that my generation is very ADHD and we don't have a very long attention span. But you'll look back at older long songs like a lot of Pink Floyd, and they switch it up. Like One of These Days, it starts out really slow, and then you got that break in the middle. Same with Careful With That Axe, Eugene, obviously. These are songs that have a break in between, so you're like, I spend all this time following Eugene along with his axe, and then suddenly, holy shit, he's going to go on a rampage with that axe, right? That's how to do a long song. You got to have some kind of feeling of progression, like you're going somewhere, like you're on a journey. A quintessential example, obviously, Stairway to Heaven. Starts out real slow, and then it builds and builds and builds. And she's buying a stairway to heaven. I don't feel like the 5-minute outro here really does that, though. And in terms of a conclusion to an album, I feel like it could do better. Maybe Mosquito or Night should have been the outro. I feel like if it ended with, "Let me be your night," I feel like it could be a little more impactful. I'd remember that. That'd be a way to go out on. I feel like longer filler-type songs should mostly be reserved for the middle of an album. Like I say, this is an EP, so it's short, and it's not too much to listen to all of it in one go, but structure is a thing. You've got to keep in mind where to put each song. You don't even necessarily need to cut a longer song like that out. You should just keep in mind that it works better in the middle, and then you want to leave the listener with an exciting end, right? Because if you think of an album like a movie, it follows the same type pacing structures. I think ordering is kind of an underappreciated technique. Album arrangement, where to put each song. And this is something people had really nailed down back when it was physical release on vinyl, and you had to open it up with, here's Tommy, Wise Tommy, and then here's Pinball Wizard, and then here's Bab O'Reilly, right? No, those are 2 albums. I'm stupid. Who's Next isn't Tommy. What am I even thinking? But you get the point. You had to think about where to put each song in relation to each other. There are some really great long songs in classic rock, like, frickin' Bob O'Reilly, right? That's like a long song. Or there's, different cuts, obviously. But I feel like if a song is going to be long, it should have a catchy hook. You should be able to listen to it for a long time. It should have kind of a build-up, slow build-up, right? Just like Stairway to Heaven. Then it reaches a crescendo, and then there's like a minute or so of, falling action. Just like a movie, again, structure, pacing. This is all important to creating a satisfying listening experience. If there is one band that these songs reminded me of, I would have to say Ariel Pink. And I don't mean to say that Kreature Feature is really at all like Ariel Pink. And like I say, this album uses like organ and stuff that Ariel Pink probably wouldn't even know how to use. But yeah, it doesn't sound like any other band really. Admittedly, Ariel Pink does have a slightly higher vocal register, so I guess that's a difference. Like, the vocals on this are lower than Ariel Pink could ever go, but it's an interesting sensibility. I'm not sure why a lot of songs sound like Ariel Pink to me. Maybe it's from when I went down the Ariel Pink rabbit hole. But yeah, I mean, sounding like Ariel Pink. Again, I'm trying to be as impartial as possible and seeing both sides of it and not saying anything too roasty or vitriolic about it. But I think if they were going for a 70s type feel, which going by the album design, I think that may very well be the case. I mean, it's got an organ and all, and the font is kind of old-fashioned. I feel like if you went for like a Steely Dan type vibe, you know, but then you'd have to have all the discipline and methodology of someone like Donald Fagen, which I don't know if anyone these days does. You know, you'd have to like be a very studious sort that goes into how songs are layered and arranged and everything to be just perfect. And I don't know if anyone these days really bothers with that sort of thing anymore. But I don't even know if these guys are trying to sound like Steely Dan. This is kind of the impression I get. In terms of organ songs, I feel like the organ is really underutilized. Again, someone like Quintron can make an organ sound great all on its own. No frills necessary, no guitar in there, just pure uncut rock organ. I feel like even a group like Church of the Cosmic Skull with Cold Sweat, that song's awesome, and it features such great organ bits. Even though there are other instruments like guitar and bass and whatever, they lay the organ on thick because they recognize that for this old-fashioned 70s type feeling, you've got to have a lot of organ in there, because that's a heavy indicator of the times. And I mean, they're all British. Like, when British people can play American-style music better than Americans can, I feel like that's kind of sad. Cold Sweat is a great example of like a modern organ-centric rock song. It's very good. And it's very good at emulating the style of like a late 60s, early 70s organ-type rock ballad. I feel like, given that the organ is on the cover, I would think the organ pops in a little more. But aside from the choice cut that is Atlantis, I don't feel like this album has nearly enough organ going on. And there's a lot more like modern keyboard. I feel like that's kind of a missed opportunity, especially if one has access to a real organ. One should use the real organ. Like when I was down in New Mexico and I had access to a real piano, and it's a great piano and it has like a wonderful key weight and everything, I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'm going to work it into my output some. I'm going to work this fantastic piece of equipment into my album. So if you have access to an organ, my advice would be go all in on the fucking organ. If it's a fucking church organ with like pipes and shit, go in on it. Do not waste an organ, because they're not that common from everything I understand. That's just some general advice there. I feel like the production is decently unique. I wouldn't say there's too much I've heard that sounds exactly like this, but I listen to a lot of Denver stuff, and obviously I do expect New Jersey sensibilities to be somewhat different. So you're going to have somewhat of a different production here. These songs are really slow. Even the interestingly produced ones, like Mosquito or Night, are very, very slow. I feel like there are some cases where a slow song works, like The End by The Doors, but at the same time, The Doors have, Light My Fire and Soul Kitchen, and you can go crazy to those songs, and then you can listen to The End and go like, oh yeah, this is 13 minutes of kind of boring plotting, but it's listenable because it's surrounded, it's sandwiched in between these two absolute bangers. And I feel like an entire album, or EP in this case, of material that is just solely like real slow BPM, I feel like there should be more variance in the tempo, especially. There should be, on the percussion side of things, a general speeding up. This happens sometimes when I'm playing live, like I'll be playing W Report or something, and my keyboard's drum machine will be turned just a little too slow, and I'll notice that, and I'll be like, wait, these notes are coming out too slow. So then I turn it up, I ramp it up, so it's like, oh, now people can dance to it, right? And that comes off as entirely organic and natural in the moment. But like if the percussion is too slow, it really does weigh a song down, unless you're like an intentional doom jazz outfit. And I don't think that's what Kreature Feature is going for. I don't assume they're trying to be born in the Club of Gore. So rock music should have a pretty fast tempo, especially like maybe if Mosquito or Night was just, say, 5 BPM faster, they could be the standout, highlight, hotspot spectacles of the entire lineup. Yeah, I feel like these are a little too slow. At least a couple of them could benefit from maybe being a little faster. I don't mean to come off like a slow song is necessarily awful or anything, but I do find it really weird that my generation is we're the ones to make genres like hyper pop and super bass and whatever, these electronic genres that are designed to be like super fast and heavy and just notes showering you from all directions. Oh, I'm a money machine. Like obvious ADHD music, but our rock output is so slow. I feel like rock music could pick up the pace a little bit, and then maybe we get some some Who's Next or some Captain Fantastic or something, an album at that style, and a little more like that. Or again, Black Friday by Steely Dan, that song is a whirlwind. And I just feel like rock music could use a little caffeine boost, because it's very weird. We have albums like Hyperpop and Jungle Fury and whatever, and then it's like rock music is very slow and melancholic. I'm not sure. Obviously not all rock music, and if that is what these guys were going for when they made it, then cool. I mean, you've achieved your goal. You've made a slow tempo, low downbeat type rock album. I mean, yeah, but in terms of the implementation of the organ, I have to say you can do so much more with an organ. And in terms of production, a little faster tempo on some songs, and the track structure could be a little different. They could be arranged differently, and more songs like Mosquito and Night, I would say, a little more like that. So what am I going to rate No Vacancy by Kreature Feature? Well, I guess I would rate it 6.5 out of 10. That's being generous, but because of Mosquito and Night, I feel like 6.5 out of 10 is pretty generous, all things considered. There's not a total bop on this album that I will be playing until the end of time or anything, but in terms of a nice breezy little EP experience, I suppose it's alright, and I certainly don't regret having listened to it. The production is great. There's no huge skips or loss or anything. Everything is mixed nice. Everything comes through. One interesting thing is that the opening riff on Mosquito sounds a lot like Enter Sandman by Metallica. I'm not sure if that's the case at all. Not saying it is. I mean, it's shifted up a little bit. And it's a wild coincidence because that's the only Metallica song I can even listen to, so it's the only one I know. So I wouldn't know if some other Metallica song had the riff borrowed. But I will say it does some stuff that like Metallica does not do, obviously. So it's a whole different song. And I myself have taken the riffs from many different songs and reworked them a little bit, although you probably wouldn't notice unless you were paying very close attention. So it's something that I do all the time as well. It's just a bit strange because this music isn't like Metallica at all, but it sounds a ton like the opening to Enter Sandman. Not sure if that's intentional. Might just be parallel thinking, who knows. Yes, that's all I can say in terms of the just raw music consumption of this album. 6.5 out of 10 for No Vacancy by Kreature Feature. Yeah, it's a decent little collection of songs. Thank you to Kreature Feature for asking me to review their little output, and yeah, I'm honored to review your music. If you have music, let me know down in the comments, and I might get on it, or email me or whatever. I mean, so long as it's just not like a single, If you've got an album, if you've got an EP, let me know, and I'll give you my thoughts on it, I suppose. Alright, that does it for today's music review, today's little album escapade. I'm going to go and play some live music tonight, and I'm going to do a darn good job of it. So, yeah, keep listening. Till next time, Nick Cicada, your roving music reporter, out.